Okay. Got some problems we have to talk about. I'm going to start with the sheriff. Why is it that so many teenagers are driving stolen vehicles into storefronts?
Because they can do it with no consequences in Snohomish County in the state of Washington. That what you just saw up there is reality in the state of Washington. It is very difficult. We just had a bureau chief, very high-ranking person at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office who still goes out and does patrol, which I encourage them to do, found a juvenile in a stolen car, and we waited, we did all the right things, and he went into a store, because we don't want a car chase and things like that, because we're not allowed to. So he comes out, he gets arrested. The first words out of the juvenile's mouth is, "I want to go home to my grandma," right? And we're thinking, yeah, right, you're under arrest, you're in a stolen car. He trashes the stolen car. It ends up, long story short, the juvenile was right, you guys. He went home to his grandma because we could not hold that person accountable on that day. And you just, no matter what age, look, I'm a huge second chance guy. I want to help kids. If a kid steals a car, there's still value in that person as a human being, right? I just want to make sure that's clear. But there has got to be consequences for criminal behavior. So
Carmen, you found yourself in a position where you were just leaving as a lot of these reforms were being passed. So obviously you know what policing was like before all of the craziness, and now you know what it's like afterwards. I mean, is it that clear to you?
Well, it absolutely is, because I would say that, it was predictable. I went through all of the defund and all those other issues, and it was predictable that without some sort of enforcement, I believe in intervention and prevention, as you mentioned, but there has to be consequences when they go too far, when the law is broken. And when you move away from that, you get what we've seen now is a proliferation of an abundance of crime across all areas, and that's not unique to Snohomish County or King County. It's happening all across the country. Many stores are closing because of the level of crime that they're experiencing.
And Councilmember, the people who are committing these crimes, especially when we're talking about juveniles, they are your neighbors, right? They are classmates of council members, kids in school. You don't necessarily want to just throw them in jail for a long time, but you also have to have some law and order. Your city has sort of straddled the line of being a little crazy and being a little normal. You happen to be one of the normal ones, thank you. But where do you see this headed? Do people on the ground, do your constituents understand why this is happening?
I do think that some of our council members do understand what's going on. Luckily, I've actually had some council members on the council serving before my time. They're still serving. They're starting to see some of the issues now affecting themselves. One council member actually had his business broken into twice, and so now he's starting to say, okay, we need to start holding people accountable to the crime.
Shocking how that works.
It is. I actually thanked him. I said, thank you for finally seeing what everyone else is seeing. Unfortunately, you had to deal with it also.
Now, one of the biggest issues heading into this election is crime, Sheriff. You're the sheriff. Do you think that they're going to blame you for being soft on crime? Generally, folks who don't necessarily know that these laws have been passed?
They better not blame me. I've been one of the only ones out there enforcing the law, for crying out loud.
But how do you have the conversations with folks? Because I've heard from a number of police chiefs who say when they talk to residents, they don't even know about the vehicular ban, the vehicular when they look at what's going on, they seem to think that it's because police just don't want to do their jobs. And we know that that is just patently false.
Yeah, it's been a tough 4 years for the cops in Washington State. Let's just make that clear. But it is not because the cops don't want to do their job. I mean, the state legislature got in all of our business and my profession in 2021, and it's really telling that in 2022 they had to go back and change the majority of those laws. Now, there's some very important stuff that you mentioned in there. The pursuit legislation still needs to be fixed. Don't let anybody tell you that it's been fixed, because it has not. You can't tell the criminal element ahead of time that we're not going to chase you for all these felony level crimes, and then what do you think is going to happen? They're not dumb. They figure it out really quick, and they run from us. You have probably seen it on I-5 or on our roads. It's kind of been crazy out there. But it is not because the cops don't want to do their job. For the last 4 years, I've ran the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, and I am so impressed with the deputy sheriffs and our civilian personnel and our corrections deputies that still go out there and do the job every day.
I don't know who I think had it the worst or has it the worst. The sheriff who has to basically get voters to give you the thumbs up, or the chief of police who has to work for a politician, right? I mean, you found yourself in a really tough spot.
I think it's the chief.
Well,
I'm
so
pretty sure it's the chief.
what was going on behind the scenes as you were trying to lead a department that started to get you went into this understaffed to begin with. It's way worse now. But you were going into this being called, weirdly, a racist. You were in charge of a white supremacist culture of the SPD. How did you deal with that?
Well, I really tried to just do the right thing the whole time. Just wanted to make sure that we focused on the fact that, as you said, Sheriff, that the men and women of the department are committed. There will be the people who do things wrong on occasion, but they're committed to public safety. They're committed to community. No one goes into the job to get rich or get wealthy. Who wants to put on a bulletproof vest every day and go out and patrol the streets? It's tough work. So I felt very, very committed to the officers, and it just was a level of crazy for a time period, for a time there, and you just have to do the right thing, right? You have to, honestly, you have to defend the officers when it's appropriate. You have to keep public safety and keeping people safe at the forefront. And some of the things that happened, there was a mass exodus. It mostly occurred after my departure, but it was completely predictable. Yeah. It was completely predictable and preventable, by the way.
So obviously, when we're talking about crime, it's not just about the homicides. It's not just about the break-ins. It's about homelessness. And it turns out, same issue, right? I mean, when you tell the homeless that they can camp out wherever it is they want to camp out, that there are no consequences of the behavior outside of living out on the streets, and they very clearly at this point don't view that as hitting rock bottom, it becomes a bigger issue. Burien has been dealing with, for a city of your size, a growing population of homeless, and your council doesn't seem all that interested in tackling the issue. You're one of the people who's standing out and saying, maybe we should do something.
Yeah, it's actually been really interesting because one of our council members that repealed our trespass ordinance back in, I want to say, 2018, he actually brought it forward that maybe we should start looking into an anti-camping ordinance. He didn't want to be one of the people that actually presented it to the public, so he asked me if I could. I did. It was shot down, I want to say, 3 times before it was finally passed. We had been trying to pass this back since February. It's been really interesting because right now we have an encampment with 93 people, I want to say, on Ambaum and 120th. The homeowners around that area, they want to see the people housed, they want to see the people into shelter, they want to get them detox services, but then we have people on the other side of the argument saying, no, we need to allow them to stay there to then come forward and ask for services when they're ready. But that doesn't make sense to me, so I was actually very proud when we finally passed the anti-camping ordinance. It will be effective now November 1st. One of the things that I actually was really worried about was if our police was actually going to be able to enforce it, because we are contracted through the King County Sheriff's Office. They actually came forward about 3 days after we passed the ordinance saying, actually, we will be enforcing it. So I'm really happy that we also have their support.
Chief Best, how much of the crime crisis is directly tied to homelessness?
Well, I always say there's an intersection. It all intersects. It just does. And it's very complex. It's hard to put that in just one category, because I've been out there in some of those encampments. Some people are severely mentally ill, some people are drug addicted, some people are both. And then there's all the folks out there who are preying on those folks, selling drugs, running prostitution, selling guns. We've seen it all, right? So all those things can be happening and occurring at the same time. So I think there's a lot of intersectionality there, and we need to address each piece of it simultaneously. There will be those out there, I know that the same thing, they were like, well, just leave them alone and let them be, but you can't do that. That is absolutely, it's inhumane and uncompassionate, to do that.
I was at because I'm deeply self-loathing, I went to the anti-Semite rally on Saturday of this last weekend, and as they were starting to march, I saw a homeless man pull down his pants, lean up against a shuttered Starbucks, shuttered because of the crime and homelessness crisis, and defecate on the side of this building. And I thought, this is just so Seattle, because you've got folks who are marching about how they care deeply about victims of oppression that they will never meet and never have met. The dude 20 feet away, they seem completely disinterested in helping. What role, Sheriff, does law enforcement truly play when it comes to homelessness and when it comes to the homeless who are deeply addicted?
Well, that's a couple-hour discussion, but I think we absolutely play a role. And like the chief just said, the difference with homelessness and crime, it's public-facing. We all drive around our streets every single day, so we see it. You know, if your home is burglarized, yes, it's very impactful. That's very important. But that is your circle of friends, your family that impacts. Homelessness impacts everybody. And I'll say this about the fentanyl crisis, which kind of goes hand in hand with this. Nobody's raising their hand and saying, yeah, it's my day to get help. We have seen that historically at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. Fentanyl is a game changer, so we are not seeing that.
Councilmember, from the local perspective, I mean, what has to happen at the state level to allow you guys to really get a hold of homelessness, whether or not it's tied to drugs?
You know, I think that's a tough question, but I think we need to be focusing on moving away from housing first. A lot of people that I interact with daily.
Does everyone here know what Housing First is? So just very quickly, Housing First, I have an entire chapter on this in my book, is essentially saying that we will put someone who's homeless in housing first. There are no preconditions to get subsidized housing. It's pitched as a way that I think on paper it sounds really good to people, which is we're going to get people the services that they need. It's wraparound services. They get a case manager. But the truth of the matter is we put them in these homes. We offer very little in way of pressure to actually get them the services that they need, and they end up staying there forever, which is very expensive, and they never treat the underlying condition.
Yeah, I actually wanted to share a story. We have a gentleman who likes to camp in our encampments in downtown Burien. We actually provided housing for him, and he left the housing, he left the apartment to go back into the encampment. I like the idea of housing first, but in practice, it's miserably failed us. The people that are supposed to be accountable to the people that they're providing housing, they're not out there every day making sure they're going to their appointments. It's a very failed concept, and I think we need to be moving away from that, and I think the government should step away from throwing money at something that isn't working, and they need to allow the organizations that are actually out there doing the work and allow them to take hold of this and let them, move forward with this, because they're the ones that are actually getting people out of housing and not the government. Out of homelessness, sorry.
Sheriff, how often do you deal with folks who are offered help over and over and over again and they continue to say no?
Every single day in Snohomish County. You saw the business owner up here in Tacoma. Just a few hours ago, we opened a substation in partnership with our businesses in Snohomish County. So I like to think our approach is just a little bit different. We're engaged. We show up, I show up every month to their monthly meetings, and we just opened that substation today. But every single day, we ask people, if we can change somebody's life, that's our goal. I'd much rather have that than lock them up in the third largest jail in the state of Washington, which is about 3 blocks from here. But it's not occurring right now. So I wish it was different, but that's just how it is right now. The people who want the housing first and everything, they live in the world of theory, you guys. It sounds great. It sounds great as we're talking about it right now. But in practice on the streets, it is not working.
Well, and they tell you that Salt Lake City is a perfect example of how it works. It's been a total and utter failure, actually. Chapter 4 in my book. Chief, when you see the situation unfold and you see it get inherently political, you try to stay completely out of politics. You try to be as down the middle as possible. And I think as chief, you were successful at that, although you're on MSNBC. What do you think drives the politics behind all of this? You've been in conversations with politicians who are helping craft some of the policy.
Well, did you write a book, by the way?
I did.
I was wondering about that.
I got your book. Did you get mine?
Yes, I do. Listen, I think this, because I think we were just talking about this. I think public safety is not a partisan issue. I don't care what, red, blue, whatever, we want our kids to be safe, we want our neighborhoods to be safe, we don't want our homes broken into, we don't want people living on the streets. That is a human issue, right? So that's how I see it. So when I'm talking to people, regardless of their political leanings, I talk about the humanity of it, right? What are we trying to achieve as a society? How do we want to live? How do we want to guide things? There is no good society, I wouldn't say not a good society, but a evolved society that doesn't have rules and regulations and people in charge. That's an anthropological study, right? And so that's why I try to approach things, because you can get too caught up and too divided if you're starting all, that tension. It's just on a human level, how do we want people to live?
Councilmember, do your colleagues agree with the way that she just described it? Do they see this as a human issue, or do they see it as political?
I think they do see it as a human issue, but in practice and on the dais, they're unfortunately missing the line on that.
So, Sheriff, your department does something interesting as far as having social workers go along with deputies. It's different than what's being discussed right now within Seattle, which is we're just going to send the social workers. That sounds like an awful idea, and I think King County Sheriff's Department will tell you that that's not a great idea. So what kind of results have you seen?
It's difficult work every day because we're told no way more often than we're told yes about getting people help in our community. But it does work, and we do have those successful stories as well. But we have to be in that game, you guys. Yeah, our first role is law enforcement, absolutely 100%, and we need to be out there enforcing the law no matter how uncomfortable it's been in the state of Washington. We will always do that. But I have staffed our outreach teams. The precinct, the substation I just mentioned that we opened, we're actually moving our teams from Marysville, which we were kind of in an industrial area, to the heart of our community at 128th and 4th Avenue West, where they're needed most. They'll now house there and we'll be there every day. So our approach is a little unique. It's a little different. I know a lot of people have the law enforcement paired with social workers. It's a good thing, and we will continue to do that work.
Would you ever send an officer, or excuse me, a social worker to deal with your average 911 call that some operator believes doesn't deserve an armed person to show up?
Well, here's what I think. Is my mic working? There we go. Here's what I think. I think that the co-responder model is a good model. It's being used in a lot of places. But if the situation has devolved to the point that you need to dial 911, send a cop, right? Yeah. That's what I think.
So we'll wrap with this sort of a rapid answers. Do you feel hope that things will start to change after this election?
I do think that things are going to start to change. We have a couple of new people that are not at all in the political spectrum. They see what's going on, and they've experienced some of the stuff that is happening in our neighborhoods, and they're wanting to change it. And I love that more normal people are wanting to run versus people that have I don't know, work in Microsoft or something. I want to see more normal people versus people that are just using a council position as a stepping stone to eventually be somewhere higher in the spectrum.
Sure.
Yeah, people are craving authenticity in their elected leadership. I can tell you that. And it sometimes makes it difficult.
You're running for re-election, yeah?
Oh, I might be running for re-election this year. Yeah, I've been running all year, so. Yeah, I think people just want their elected leadership. Just be real, be honest, be authentic. I completely agree with the chief, where I think people are so tired of red team, blue team stuff. Just, are you in office? Are you getting stuff done or not? And that's what I've tried to bring to Snohomish County Sheriff's Office the last 4 years.
I would say this, I would never give up hope. If we give up hope, what are we left with? So we have to hope, we have to, roll up our sleeves, do the work, come to these meetings like you all are, have the conversation, and try to move things forward.
Do you guys have hope? There you go. Former Chief Bess, Sheriff Fortney, Councilmember Mora. Thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate it.